Welcome to the Green Pretenders,
a sustainably challenged podcast.
My name is Sian.
And my name is Simon. And this episode's honorary Green Pretender is no other than my lovely sister Anne Wiedlack. Anne is based in Buenos Aires, and she teaches yoga at her own studio, Anapurna Yoga Ayurveda.
In my conversation with Anne, we talked about yoga and how spirituality can aid sustainability. We talked about Anne's recent foray into Extinction Rebellion, and we got a glimpse into what it's like to try and be a green pretender in Buenos Aires at the moment.
Here's this episode's honorary green pretender, Anne Wiedlack.
Anne, hello.
Hi there.
So, first of all, please just tell me where you are right now.
I'm in Buenos Aires, in the very center of Buenos Aires, in Argentina.
Yes, I've been so excited to speak to you just based on the fact that you're so far away, because more than ever, the world feels so small at the moment. And I mean, I basically have stared at the four walls in my flat for day after day after day. So to think of you over there in Buenos Aires is such a nice thought.
Yeah, it might sound really exotic, but maybe our lives are not that different at the moment because we've been in the longest lockdown since, I don't know, human nature, because it's actually really, we started quite early here in Argentina with the lockdown, like on I think the 20th of March last year. So it's been almost a year for us because the Argentine government wanted to prevent what was going to happen, but actually it didn't work out.
So what are the restrictions looking like where you are? Is it a full quarantine, full curfew? What's it like?
No, not anymore. It was for the first couple of months like that because, we were entering into autumn and winter. But then, and I'm a yoga teacher and I teach classes, group classes at home.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to close our studio for like half a year and we started giving online classes and stuff. But then in October last year, we opened up again. And since then, we've been open.
You, of course, are not originally from Argentina, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm Austrian, but I've been living here since 2013. Yeah, I moved here in April 2013, so it's been 8 years.
And does it feel now like it's home to you then?
Yeah, it does. Interestingly enough, I felt more at home here immediately, like the second I moved here, then I ever felt at home in Berlin, where I was living before for 5 years. I don't know. I immediately got this sense of, community somehow. And although I didn't know so many people, but people are really like welcoming here, and they gave me a really warm welcome.
That's amazing. I've also experienced a similar thing in South America in general, kind of hospitality and that sense of community and just doors flung open for people, and you become part of someone's like family quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
So obviously we're so pleased to have you on the podcast, and you are not only a friend but a family member of the podcast, as Simon's sister. And he often references you and talks about you as an inspiration to him. And Simon is an inspiration to me. So therefore you are an inspiration to me too, through Simon.
Oh, thank you.
I would love to start off by just asking you about, in Argentina, day to day, what is it to be sustainable? Do people talk about it? Do the government register it in their day-to-day rhetoric? Tell us about what it's like to be in Buenos Aires and trying to live a sustainable life.
So when I first moved here, it was so difficult because I've been a vegetarian for like decades, and it's a meat-loving country. Actually, I think it's one of the biggest meat producers worldwide. So vegetarianism wasn't really popular, and veganism even less. But in the last couple of years, I've noticed a change in that direction, because there are popping up more and more vegan restaurants and, like super small businesses. And people are also trying to eat more organic food. They're trying to live a more sustainable life. So it's becoming easier. And there are even coming up small businesses that produce biodegradable cleaning products, which I think a couple of years ago was unthinkable. Also, when you start to get interested in these kind of things, you find more and more stuff, because maybe there were already more movements and you just didn't know about them. But I think it's really a trend, which is, I think, really positive. And I also think that this pandemic made people think a lot more about the habits. Now the government should be doing much more, of course. And it's really not that much on their agenda.
Do they have official policies, or is slash the carbon footprint by 2050 kind of promises that our government are making? For example, whether the promises are sincere or not is another story. But is there anything like that going on over there?
Yes, but there is so much corruption, and there is so much power that the huge corporations have. And like, for example, there were huge protests because in the south of Patagonia, they were trying to start a huge mine, I think a coal mine. And it would have been a really like a mega huge project, and people started to protest. And of course, the mass media reported on activists being violent and trying to threaten the governor's lives and stuff like that, which was completely exaggerated. But I think there are a lot of things going on, and people are starting to get more aware of them, and they're starting to protest. So this has, in the end, some kind of impact. At least they stopped these negotiations now. And also, there was another project where they wanted to make huge farms for actually feedlots for pigs, livestock. But it was not it was actually a production. It would have been a production for China, So we would have, here in Argentina, we would have had these huge feedlots for pigs, and then they would have been exported to China, which is so absurd, because and it would have polluted so much, the soil and the water around and stuff like that. And then, people started to protest, and they stopped the negotiations as well.
It made me think of the film Okja. Have you seen that on Netflix?
Yes, I did.
The way you described their efforts to make these big factories to farm these pigs to then export them to China, it made me think of Okja. And the beautiful thing about Okja is that everything that happens for good comes from such a grassroots level, and it's people, and it's grassroots, and it's on the ground, and that's what ends up making the difference, because the authorities are too far gone. So I have a lot of hope, and it sounds like a lot of people around you are moving in the right direction. What you said about the diet was really interesting. I'd be interested to know, so you said people are kind of coming around to eating less meat. How do you maintain your vegetarianism? What's your average diet like out there?
Actually, I'm in transition to veganism, so I'm trying to leave out all milk products and cheese and stuff like that as well, because for, I don't know, obvious reasons. Yeah. So I'm trying to buy local and seasonal vegetables and fruits, and there are some movements that have been here for decades already, because agricultural business is huge in Argentina, and most of the people who work the soil, they don't own it. And there's a huge difference, like up to, I don't know, 400% between what we pay for produce and what they receive. So to oppose this, there are movements of local small farmers who got organized, some in unions and some in just non-political movements, and they try to grow organic. They don't always have this organic, they can't call themselves organic, so they call themselves, I don't know, how do you call them, ecologically grown or something like that.
Is it like the fair trade thing, like badges that kind of don't
exactly
quite,
it would be the badge organic would be really expensive. So they don't use any pesticides, and they also try to pay the people who work the soil better, and they treat them better, and then they try to leave out the intermediates, so the products come directly to the customers. So there is really a huge movement, a huge trend there, and I'm trying to buy these. They sell them in huge boxes. So you just order a box of, I don't know, 8 kilos of vegetables and fruits, and you automatically get those things that are regional and also seasonal. So yeah, I'm trying to do that. Also for my own health, to make sure that I get the most out of it, because, oh my God, pesticides would be another big story for this podcast. And, there are like 500 millions liters of pesticides used per year here, which would be like 11 liters per person, which is one of the highest uses worldwide. This is so crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. It's like going for a night out and drinking a few pints of pesticides.
Exactly. So trying to eat these kind of veggies, I'm trying to avoid this also.
Yeah, and it's nice to think of how almost similar that is to something that a lot of people are trying here. People get their veg boxes delivered, seasonal produce, and it's like we're halfway across the world from each other, but fundamentally we have the opportunity to make the same choices. Simon and I talk a lot about voting with your wallet and making decisions based on your values, and you've got to sometimes put that bit of effort in to find the supplier or to find the company that's going to give you something that you believe is right.
That's so true. Yeah.
Talking about things like pesticides and agriculture, for you, is it something that interests you and that you've researched in your own time, or do you have a deeper link to that?
Oh my God, I'm no kind of expert in this, but I started to read 2 books of the same author. She's quite popular here. She's actually a food journalist or reporter, something like that. She's called Soledad Barruti, and she wrote 2 books about the agricultural industry and then about the milk industry in Argentina, and that really opened my eyes. And it's so sad because it also has to do with colonialism, actually, because it's got to do with foreign corporations that come here and exploit people and the soil and animals as well.
Yeah.
And take away all the profits again. And that's always like a sore spot I have, because I'm from Europe and I live here, and I earn my money in pesos, but still, I'm coming from a middle class family and I went to university, so I guess I got things easier. And then when I read about these things, I'm like, oh no, again, or still. And it's really crazy because this doesn't only concern the agriculture and food, but also, for example, like clothing. Because, for example, I don't buy any clothes here. I'm trying to consume as little as possible, which is another way of, I think, of living a more sustainable life and trying to buy secondhand and stuff. But when I do, the quality here is really, really bad. And it might be the same brands as in Europe, but like the shops in Europe would get the better quality stuff than, and here comes the worst of the worst, because even if you go, like, for example, to Sada, and there would be like a winter sale or something like that. All the sweaters would have holes in them, and I thought, oh my God,
No.
how this is like so bad.
Oh my
It's like
God.
the people in Europe think, or I don't know, the managers think, what can we do with all this shitty stuff that no one in Europe wants to buy? Oh, we're just gonna send it to South America. Somebody will buy it there,
It's like
and that's so
sloppy
mean.
seconds. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
horrible.
exactly. It's horrible. And for example, the same with computers. My boyfriend, he's an IT guy, so he really knows about stuff, and he was looking at what's available here, and that doesn't only have to do with importation restrictions, but it also has to do with what the companies think that people will want to buy here, and then in comparison to what they would want to buy in Europe, which would be, of course, again, of better quality there and poorer here. And that makes me really angry.
Understandably. It's like Europe are currently a barrier to you being able to live more sustainably in your own country. What about independent companies or Argentina-based companies? Are they able to sort of challenge this?
Sure, some of them are, and they're popping up more and more. But then, when they try to grow, there's always some kind of difficult barrier because the other ones are just too strong. I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff going on. The other day, for example, I was searching on Instagram, and I found this small company that produces shoes that are made of recycled tires, and the people who produce them are in prison.
Like car
Was
tires.
it clear? Yeah, car tires.
Yeah, and those are the kind of solutions that I love the most because they're solving multiple problems at once. You're getting a sustainable product that's using a waste item, and there's also a project for people who are incarcerated to give them, a nice sense of purpose, and that there's like two things going on at once there, and both are really valid, and they mesh to make a great solution.
Exactly.
I think it's really good for our listeners in Europe to hear stuff like this, because what you were talking about, this element of colonial guilt, I guess you could say, that we all carry, or we should carry. And I think far too often I see people really not wanting to take any role in that and saying, well, it's my ancestors, it's nothing to do with me. And I always think there's a big difference. We don't have to take blame necessarily, but we can still take responsibility. Responsibility is different to blame, and we can acknowledge that something's happened and then see it even more as our responsibility to do something about it. So I think, it's definitely so healthy to be aware of that and how our background has impacted where everything is today, like everything, the way people are treated, the way things are made, the things we eat. It's just never ending, isn't it?
Totally, yeah, I think so too.
And your yoga teaching, for you, is that linked to kind of the environment and the world and sustainability?
Yeah, of course it is, because if you look into yoga philosophy, there is, always this, first of all, yoga means union in Sanskrit, and it somehow, hopefully at some point, leads you to realize that we are not separate from the world, we are part of it. And once you're aware of that, you cannot continue to eat or live the same way you did before, because everything you do has an impact on your surrounding. And I've seen people change a lot. I myself changed a lot through the yoga practice, just becoming more and more aware first of my own body and then of my habits. And this goes from really like small things like stopping to smoke, not in my case, but I've seen people, to, I don't know, turning vegetarian, or just, I don't know, like small changes. And I think that's really important though, because it's something you experience. And you can sometimes watch a billion of movies and then read a lot of stuff, but once you experience these kind of things, like you have enlightenment, and that's what happens to me sometimes when I realize a truth, in brackets, but you realize something and you just cannot go on the same way you did before. So I think that's a really powerful thing of yoga. And then, of course, there's also one of the principles, which is ahimsa, which would mean non-violence. That's one of the principles of yoga philosophy. And yeah.
Is it a sort of contradiction for someone to practice yoga and to eat meat, for example? Do those two things go against each other if you truly believe in the values of yoga?
For me, it does, but that's something personal because I think I don't want to eat dead animals. I don't want to cause harm by my eating habits. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. Like, if you practice yoga, you don't have to be a vegetarian. I've seen a lot of people switching to vegetarianism though, but you can't impose these kind of things. So no, I wouldn't say it's a contradiction. And maybe for you at some point it would be more harmful to yourself to, I don't know, force yourself not to eat meat.
And it could become an all or nothing situation so that you don't engage. Because I think maybe some people could be intimidated by the values of mindfulness and yoga and feel it's all or nothing, so they just don't explore it at all, which is sad. Because I was thinking of the word vicious circle, but like the opposite, like a kind circle or a friendly circle, I'm not sure what, but with yoga and mindfulness and then green living, because I sometimes find, I do yoga sometimes. I'm not as committed as I should be or as I'd like to be. But, in those moments of stillness, I often find myself thinking about the environment and about how I can be more committed and be better. And then vice versa, when I'm out in the world, I start craving that mindfulness and that yoga. So it kind of goes in a nice, kind circle, I'm going to call it.
Yeah, I think so too. I like the kind circle.
Yeah.
I feel the kind circle all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you turn your attention inward, and I think that often helps get away from all these distractions that all the, I don't know, like marketing of stuff, or you always are craving and always want to have more and more. And with yoga, it's just, you just want to be.
Yeah, it's like the opposite mindset to the overwhelming capitalism that's shoved down our throats all the time.
Exactly, yeah.
What would you have any advice for someone who has maybe thought about having a go with yoga but has always felt like too intimidated or like they'd feel silly or something like that? What would your advice be to someone like that?
Just don't give up. Try different classes, try different teachers, because there are also different styles, and sometimes you just have to connect with the person who teaches you. So keep on trying. And there's nothing silly you can do. Like, if you think you're not flexible enough to do yoga, that's so not true, because actually you're doing yoga to maybe get more flexible, or I don't know, to be more still or more mindful. So there are loads of reasons.
You have to walk before you can run.
Exactly.
Now, seeing as you are on the Green Pretenders podcast, you'll know that often we talk about the things that we get wrong as much as the things that we get right. So what's something that challenges you or just find really hard to keep up with? What's your Achilles heel?
So what's been really difficult for me, it is connected to me being Austrian, because I from time to time really need to go and see my family. So the only option, living so far away from them, is taking the plane. And that's really bad for the environment. Yeah, I don't know what to do about this one. So...
And I think the thing that frustrates me the most about plane travel is it's one of these classic examples of, if everyone just did it every now and then, it would be fine. It's like the fact that, you have to feel, or you don't have to, but you are made maybe to feel guilty for taking a flight to see your family in Austria, when there are people out there using planes such to excess, like flying here, there and everywhere every other bloody weekend. And you think it is frustrating, because as an individual, there's only so much you can do. There's a point at which your contribution to this planet. You know, you only get one shot at life, and you're not exactly going to not see your family. But if everyone else just stopped flying so much, and it would just be fine. But that's not the way it works, unfortunately, is it?
Yeah, it isn't. But it's so true. Yeah, sometimes the most frustrating thing for me is that I can't change people's minds.
Yes. Yeah, I was just thinking that. I wonder how we could ever appeal to the rich and famous. How could we ever change their minds that it's not necessary to have that private jet? I don't think we could. So I guess we have to accept that and just do our bit. And actually, this leads on quite nicely to what I was going to ask you next. I mean, how do you appeal to climate skeptics that you meet in your life? What's your strategy, and how do you engage with people who maybe couldn't care less or actually don't agree that the climate is important? What's your technique?
I don't have a good technique, I have to say, but my recommendation is always to educate and try to inform, because there's so much information out there. And then something else would be to take the person on site. Like, for example, now, and that's a really big ego poop, as you guys call it, because there are forest fires in the south of Argentina, in Patagonia, and they're really huge. And I think since January already almost 40,000, how do you say, hectares? Hectares, yeah, have burned down.
Oh my God.
And 95% of those fires are always intentional, because people want to use the land for, I don't know, livestock, or they want to, I don't know, build stuff, or they want to sell the land to somebody. So build a hotel, I don't know. So, and there are still people who say that these things don't happen. So I don't know, take the person there. But it's so difficult, because, you know, even in the pandemic, people said that there is no virus, it doesn't exist. So yeah. I'm really, I don't know, I'm a little bit clueless.
Yeah, post-truth society, aren't we? People can see things with their own eyes and still just decide not to believe it. So it's hard not to feel a bit helpless, isn't it? But I think
it is.
Positive engagement always, the more we kind of shout at people or tell them they're being stupid, the less they'll want to listen. And that's a lesson that I'm still learning as well. You know, I spend way too much time on the internet thinking like, oh God, well, there's such idiots. Like, of course the climate change, of course there's a climate crisis. Oh, you're such an idiot. And then I'm like, if I said these words to their face though, what would they do other than say, leave me alone and never speak to me again? So it's
totally.
Yeah, finding that presence and patience in yourself, which I guess comes back to yoga quite nicely, that presence of mind, that calm and patience to engage with people selflessly and in a way that they might actually respond to one day.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. But that's it's a hard one for me as well sometimes.
Yeah. So what would be then your eco whoop to challenge the eco poop, the very sad eco poop of the forest fires?
Maybe it's my eco whoop of the year, because last year with the whole pandemic going on, I got a little bit depressed, and a little bit desperate also, and I thought, what's the use of doing anything if the world's going down? So then I read another book by an activist. She's amazing. I'm so happy also that these activists are women.
Yes.
Female power. And she led me to Extinction Rebellion, and I became a member. And because this movement is also here in Argentina, and in most of my meetings, and especially in my first meetings, I met so many young people that were around, I don't know, maybe 20 or just finishing college or starting university, and they were all so, I don't know, engaged and working so hard for the planet and, I don't know, the environment. And that was so important for me, because it gave me some kind of hope that I had already lost in humanity, because I thought if these younger generations have a different view on the world, and on, maybe they are not so focused on consumerism and on greed and selfishness. So that gave me so much hope. And I think that's the biggest eco whoop.
That is so inspiring. And to think that it's like hope for the planet, but also on an individual level, it sounds like it really boosted your own mental health and just your experience of the world at that time.
Totally.
Oh my God. What was the logistical process of getting involved with Extinction Rebellion? What were the actual steps you had to take to be at that meeting on that day?
So you just have to sign up on the website. I think they have a website in almost every country. I don't know. And then they're going to contact you, and you have introductional meetings, and you have to listen to one of their speeches, so you get to know about their principles and about what they want, and their demands and stuff. And then what is so amazing about them is they're super democratic and super inclusive, and you can just spend as much time as you want to engaging in one of the groups that you're most, I don't know, you feel like you can contribute to.
What group
like,
is
for
that
example,
for you?
For me, it's the design group. I do, I have a little knowledge of, design programs, so I'm doing some of the Instagram stuff. And then the other thing would be the recreational group. So I give them yoga classes 2 Saturdays a month. So because there's still a lot of eco anxiety, so it's for the members only, so that they can, I don't know, like have an hour of rest of all the preoccupations and calm down a little bit. So
like a safe space.
Exactly.
What's the public attitude towards Extinction Rebellion over there in Argentina? Because here, I think there's still a sense from the average member of the public, if you were to say Extinction Rebellion, the response is that they're radical, kind of crazy hippies. It seems like a very extreme point of view for the average person. What's the view of it over there?
Well, if you ask mass media, of course, they're super violent and intimidate government members. But that's actually not at all the case, because one of the principles is non-violence as well, which is also why I like them a lot. And you totally you don't have to be in the group of people who are letting themselves get arrested. You can just be in the background and support them just like that. But I think most of the people, I think because, in Argentina, there's a lot of culture of going out there on the streets to demonstrations and stuff like that. People are quite political, and so it's not always seen badly or that radical.
I did actually try and dip my toe a bit more formally into Extinction Rebellion, because I've been on marches and I've been in the sit-ins and I've been in person when Extinction Rebellion are present, but I wouldn't have said I was a member. But I did try and become a rebel ringer, and I don't know if it's the same roles everywhere or maybe that's just local to here, but it was a role where you'd basically just be cold calling people or ringing people who've expressed an interest and just kind of talking to them about the cause. But I kind of chickened out. But yeah, I'm very inspired to hear how much of a difference it's clearly made for you, and I feel like I need to get back on that.
For me it was so crucial because I could actively do something with all the anxiety that I had. And you guys, of course, you have the podcast and you do a lot of stuff. But I felt like, for me, all the small changes that I do in my habits, they're just not enough. I felt like there has to be something bigger that I can do. And getting involved, I think, is the best way to get out of this anxiety.
Yes. I actually think this is such a beautiful note to end on, because it's like positive and it's active and it's motivational. So I just want to say, is there anything else that you would like to say that you would regret not having said leaving this little chat?
I don't know. I hope I gave you the image of the situation here, and I don't know.
You definitely have. I'm going to go away from this with a lot of new information and just a lot to think about. And I also want to look up the writers that you've mentioned. I don't know whether their books will be in translation or if I'll have to brush off my Spanish a bit. But yeah, can you remind me, what was the name of her name?
She's called Soledad Barruti. I can
Okay.
send you the name afterwards. And then the other one, the other amazing woman is Flavia Brofoni, and she wrote a book called I don't know if she's just friends with the guys from Extinction Rebellion or if I think she's actually involved. And she wrote a book that's called Extinction, and where she's explaining quite clearly about the situation that we're in today and the climate crisis and the ecological crisis, and she's amazing.
Amazing. Soledad and Flavia.
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking them up, definitely.
Cool.
And if people want to find you on any social media platforms, do you use social media often? And if so, how can people find you if they wanted to?
Sure, of course. I mean, it's mostly related to my yoga classes, and you can find me by my company's name, which is called Anapurna Yoga and Ayurveda. Anapurna, like the Hindu goddess and the mountain in the Himalayas.
Beautiful. Well, let's close this chat with an image of the mountains in the Himalayas and a lovely, calm, wonderful vibe. Thank you so much for chatting to me. I've had a wonderful time,
Thanks for having
me.
me.
Yeah, it's just been such an interesting conversation, and to have met Simon's sister, even though it's only been through voice. But one day, I really hope we will meet in 3D.
That would be amazing. You're always welcome here if you come by boat.
Yes. Okay. I will see you in Argentina.
Okay. Thanks so much, Sean.
Thank you.
Eco snaps for Anne.
Snap, 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 snap.
I'm so happy that you finally, I'm doing quotation marks, met Anne, finally.
It was like speaking to you in so many ways. I can't wait to meet her in real life at some point in 3D properly, because she was just so calmly eloquent and wise, and her speech patterns and her way of thinking it reminded me of you so much. But yeah, everything she had to say I was in awe of, so I loved it.
Oh, that makes me so happy, and I this time have a huge smile on because I think it's so funny. I think the four of us are just so similar. We're so different in so many ways as well, but yeah, I think if you got us all in the same room, you would just smile because you're like, oh, you are sisters.
Yeah, because for any listeners that aren't aware, Simon has 3 sisters.
I do. 3 wonderful sisters.
I'd like to get in a room with all the Wiedlack siblings at once and just bask in the wisdom and the glow.
One day.
One day. One bloody day. So, have you got some eco whoops and eco poops for us?
I do indeed. Let's start with the poop of this episode. So I watched Dispatches, Dirty Truth About Your Rubbish, which is a channel for, I want to say documentary, but it's, one of those 40-minute episodes. It was actually on The Guardian. The Guardian wrote about it as well. So basically, you know how we diligently, I know you do too, recycle our rubbish, and we pick out the materials that we want to send to recycling, and then in the UK, a lot of it is actually just sent to a energy to waste to energy facility, and it gets burned, and that is really, really bad for the environment. It's bad for the air quality. There's a lot of toxic chemicals that are being released, and also, what the bloody hell? Like, why are we recycling if then it's all burned? I think this is a massive poop, and I think it needs to stop now.
Agreed. It's so depressing. And you also sounded a bit like Dick Van Dyke for a second there. What the bloody hell? Like...
What? Are you saying that my Cockney accent is not convincing?
No, that's not what I meant at all. Sorry. No. You misinterpret. You were outraged in Cockney for a moment there.
Yes, that is my outrage. accent.
Yeah, and that's classic fodder for this podcast, isn't it? Because it makes everything feel a bit futile, but we have to keep trying.
Yeah, and I mean, I said last episode actually that I'm gonna turn every eco poop into an eco whoop, but I just don't know how. Like, there's a major issue with this one, but I will contact the council. Somehow I'd also love to interview someone from the council or waste burning facility or whatever for this podcast. So we'll see. I'm working on it. Don't have a fix for it now.
Maybe the whoop we can whoop out to anyone who actually lives like zero waste, because then they're not even incurring this problem in the first place. If you don't ever buy anything that isn't immediately like biodegradable or not packaged, then the issues with recycling don't exist. So
good.
Whoop to those people.
Yeah. And maybe this should enrage me so much that I actually do more to not even create waste in the first place. So yeah, that is actually a good point.
Whoop-de-whoop. My poop is... No, do you know what? I'm actually going to do my whoop first, because I want you to do your whoop before my poop. So my eco whoop is Etsy. It's very mainstream. Well, actually, is it mainstream? I don't know. I think a lot of people know of it. It's more mainstream than some platforms are. So hopefully people have heard of it. But it's just like eBay, I guess. It's a platform for independent sellers. And most of the time, the sellers on there are selling things that they've made themselves. So a while ago, I set myself the challenge of buying things secondhand. And, you know, that's quite easy when it comes to clothes, really. If you get into the habit of charity shops and eBay and Depop and Vinted and all these things. But then other things, you know, you think, oh, I actually need a certain type of little jewellery or something. It's not always so easy to find like accessories or homeware via those platforms. And Etsy is just absolutely awash with people, really creative people that have made really interesting things. So I recently got a photo frame there, whereas a couple of years ago I would have just nipped out to Wilko's and got a cheap frame. I went on Etsy, found this guy who makes these beautiful paint wash frames. He makes them all by hand. So yeah, Etsy and sustainable creative businesses.
Yes, and I would argue it should be more mainstream. You know, Etsy should be the go-to, because also we want to, as you say, support local businesses. And I actually have a friend who makes jewellery, and she sells it on Etsy. It's Anne Jewelry, Ahne. Find her on Instagram. Her stuff is really lovely. Yeah.
Did you make some of her jewellery at one point, or were you an assistant for her at some point?
Yes, I did. Yes. Yeah. I assisted her. Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's really fun.
Okay, so now, what is your eco whoop?
My eco whoop, dum dum dum. Some of you might have seen it. It's Seaspiracy, the documentary on Netflix. I found it horrendous, but in a waking up way. I mean, I'm a vegetarian anyway, and have been for many years, but it's outrageous what is happening to our oceans, and how it all kind of, there is a bit of a conspiracy going on, I think, which intentionally or non-intentionally, but, you know, these fishing companies are actually paying some of the charities, or supporting some of the charities like Ocean Plastic. It's just, oh my god, it just blew my mind. But I think it's really, really important that people watch it and, wake up to this issue as well, because the oceans are actually a major, major, major ally in fighting the climate crisis, but we're doing them no good at the moment.
And, you know, whereas we might think of rainforests and jungles as sucking up a lot of carbon dioxide, big on-land areas of plants, it's actually the oceans, the algae and the seaweed, and it does more for clearing up the carbon dioxide than anything on land. So we bloody need them.
Yeah, 100%. Now, what are you going to say?
Well, yeah, so this is why I wanted you to do your whoop before my poop, because my poop is also Seaspiracy, but in a slightly different way. I'm not saying that it's a poop in itself, But I think the poop around this Netflix documentary is the noise that's come after it. So obviously, as a Netflix produced documentary, there is an agenda. You know, I think Netflix has changed the definition of documentary, whereas in the past a documentary might have been a factual program that just presents the facts and in an objective way. When a documentary's on Netflix, it's not like that. But I think that's just something we accept, you know, it's their storytelling and they do have an agenda. They should almost call it like a campaign movie, I think. But anyway, people are getting very angry about this because people are saying it's biased and it's misinformation and it's over the top and it actually doesn't do enough to show the other side of the story where people are trying to do good things for the ocean. And my issue with all of this is that, like, the core message is already lost. Like, fundamentally, there is an issue with how our oceans are being treated. And whether or not that's 100% of the time and 100% of people is kind of irrelevant. But this argument now about how representative the documentary has been has overtaken, in a lot of people's minds, the actual message. People have already forgotten. Oh, so should I, you know, think about how much seafood I eat, because they're too busy arguing with people on Twitter. So that's why it's a poop in my mind. It's just annoying. It's like the internet just twists things. Before anything can even land, the internet's found a way to make it some big drama. So that's a poop.
It is a big poop. And you know what? Like, okay, I'm gonna take my aluminium hat off. But you could almost see that is part of the conspiracy, because people are actually not talking, as you say, about the message anymore and what is happening to the oceans, but people are talking about whether they got everything right, that they didn't show the other side, that, you know, like, fishing is so important and it can be done sustainably. And I think, yeah, it's totally there are powers working against this documentary in many, many ways.
I saw an exchange on the health site that is Twitter, which I am self-admittedly obsessed with, where a lady said, chipping in here as a marine biologist, these are all the reasons why Seaspiracy is inaccurate and actually more harmful than good. And then some other guy chipped in and he was like, follow the money of your research. You're part of the problem because your research is funded by the people. It was just so confusing. I was like, but this is a marine biologist. But then this guy's saying that her research funding is going to be skewed anyway. I mean, I just lost the plot. So yeah, even for me, I've already stopped thinking about the core message of it.
Yeah.
One other thing I'd like to say about Seaspiracy is that Lily Allen tweeted saying that it should have been called Conspiracy, with the C spelled SEA. And she was like, I can't believe they didn't notice that this should have been called Conspiracy. And this tweet got 5 bajillion million likes, and everyone was like, oh my god, yeah, what idiots, why did they not think of that? And that really wound me up, because I was like, but if you say that out loud, it's just the word conspiracy. You'd have to keep, like, by word of mouth. Just want to add that to my poop. That really wound me up, and I wanted to be like, excuse me, Lily Allen, but that doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Oh my god.
End of rant.
Conspiracy. We're shutting down Lily Allen, and we're ending this episode.
Lily Allen is cancelled. Marine biologists are cancelled. I'm just cancelling the oceans. I'm cancelling the squids. I'm done.
Cancelling the squids. I love it. I think it ties in nicely with what Anne said in the interview, that you should always educate yourself and look further than what is presented to you on social media.
Completely. And actually, I think I'm going to laugh listening back to this, because speaking to Anne, I got this real sense of calm and I felt like I'd learnt so much from her, and I feel like I've already gone back on all of that. I've just been ranting for 5 minutes about Lily Allen on Twitter. Come on. So yes, be more Anne. Take a deep breath, engage the yoga mindset, and just be calm.
Yes, and you can calmly find us on social media at Green Pretenders, where we will be shouting and ranting. No, but you can engage with us that way. You can also send us an email, thegreenpretenders@gmail.com.
And if you want to be more Anne, which we would highly recommend. You can follow her on Instagram, or it's kind of her yoga studio via Instagram, Anapurna, ANAPURNA _yoga _Ayurveda. Now, I don't know if I said that right, but that's AYURVEDA. Check out her beautiful yoga studio and her yoga practice.
Yeah, and if you're in Buenos Aires, swing by, check her out. It's really, really lovely there. I love the whole space. It's just beautiful. So, yeah.
And we'll leave you with our parting words to remember that the pod is always greener.